You're not supposed to be here. That's what she said. No hello. No surprise. No guilt. Just that. As if I'd crashed her life, instead of her detonating mine. The moment I walked in, the music didn't stop, but I swear the people near her did. Glasses paused midair. Conversations clipped. And Mallory? She looked like someone had yanked the world out from under her heels. Eyes wide. Lips parted. Fingers still resting on the wrist of the guy next to her, like she forgot he existed. I didn't even flinch. I held the door open a second longer, letting the wind sweep in behind us, me and the woman on my arm, like some kind of poetic draft sent from karma itself. I know, I sound dramatic. I am dramatic. When your wife cheats on you and dares to bring the guy she betrayed you with to a party filled with your friends and your memories, it does something to your brain. It unhinges the quiet parts. Let me be clear, I didn't come for revenge. I came because she made this party her stage, and I wasn't going to let her write me out of the final act. I hadn't seen her in almost 4 weeks. After she left the house, to think, after I found the burner phone in her gym bag, after I heard her whispering in the hallway about not being ready to tell him yet, I'd disappeared. Quietly, I moved into a sublet above a dentist's office. Nobody knew. I told her nothing. No texts. No calls. No arguments. I just evaporated. And she took that silence as permission. I know she did. She showed up on social media again, tagging herself in rooftop lounges, laughing in dimly lit dinners with people I'd never met. But the worst part? She smiled with him the way she used to smile at me. Like she chose him. Like he was a reward for surviving me. But tonight? Tonight wasn't about her. It was about showing her I was no longer the man she could bury quietly. The woman I brought, let's call her Iris, didn't need to say a word. Her presence did all the damage. She wasn't just beautiful, she was intentional. The kind of woman who made you sit up straighter when she looked at you. Not loud, not flashy, but undeniable. And when we crossed the floor together, all eyes followed us like heat-seeking missiles. Mallory finally stepped forward, her voice brittle. What is this? I looked at her. Really looked. For the first time in a year, she looked small, nervous, jealous. And I answered calmly. This is what moving on looks like. Her date said something. I didn't catch it. I wasn't listening. I was too focused on the way her fingers tightened around her champagne glass, like she needed to hold on to something. And it hit me. For the first time in this whole twisted nightmare, I was the one in control. I didn't plan what I was going to say next. Honestly, I didn't even expect her to speak to me, let alone confront me in front of her new trophy date. Some finance type with teeth too white to be real and a handshake like he'd only ever practiced it in the mirror. The fact that she actually looked shaken caught me off guard. I'd rehearsed this scene in my head a dozen times since I vanished, but in none of those versions did Mallory look like she wanted the earth to swallow her whole. She tried to smile, but her lips twitched like they didn't know how anymore. Wow, Owen, she said, reaching for sarcasm like a lifeline. You're really making an entrance tonight. I could tell she wanted to laugh, to belittle me like she always used to when she got nervous, pretend everything was fine, that I was overreacting again, like always. But I wasn't biting this time. I wasn't the guy who apologized for existing anymore. Iris didn't say a word. She didn't need to. Just standing there next to me, poised and calm, she outshined every woman in the room, including Mallory, especially Mallory. And I know how that sounds. I sound shallow. Petty. Maybe I am. But you don't know what it's like to be made to feel invisible in your own marriage until you see your wife post pictures with a man who wears your cologne better than you. Mallory glanced at Iris, trying to piece it together. So what? You just found some Instagram model to make a point? Her voice cracked a little at the end. Just a little. But I heard it. She was trying to hurt me. Trying to regain control. Like always. I let her words hang in the air for a second before answering. No, Mallory. I didn't find her. She found me. Or maybe I just stopped hiding. I don't even know what that meant exactly, but it felt good to say it. The guy she came with, Todd? Tom? Whatever, tried to cut in. Is this guy a problem? He asked, his voice slow and threatening, like someone who watched too many action movies and thought being taller made him intimidating. Iris raised an eyebrow, but still said nothing. I took a step closer, just enough to make Mallory uncomfortable. Not in a threatening way. Just enough to let her feel the space between us shrink. You told me once I didn't care enough to fight for you, I said quietly. But you were wrong. I cared so much I let you bury me in silence. And now that I finally stopped crawling, this is what you're scared of? Mallory blinked rapidly. She was trying so hard not to show emotion, but her eyes gave her away. She was furious. Not because I'd shown up. Not even because I'd moved on. She was furious because I was doing it better than she ever expected. People were watching now. Not just side glances, full attention. It wasn't just me and her anymore. It was a silent courtroom, and she was on trial for the first time. She hated it. Hated being the one exposed. Her nails dug into her clutch. You always loved playing the victim, she hissed under her breath. Still clinging to that. I shrugged. Not clinging, I said. Just walking away with dignity. Something you wouldn't recognize if it danced in front of you. Her date put a hand on her back. She jerked away, too distracted to notice she was unraveling. She looked at me again, but her expression had shifted. It wasn't just anger now. It was fear. Fear that maybe I didn't need her anymore. Fear that I wasn't broken like she thought. Fear that I'd finally learned to let her go, without begging, without bitterness, without tears. Just gone. I turned to leave. Not dramatically. Not to make a statement. Just because I didn't want to be in that room anymore. I didn't need to win. I didn't even need to be seen. I'd already done what I came to do. And as we walked out, I heard someone whisper behind me. I couldn't tell who, but I'll never forget the words. Damn. He actually came out on top. And for the first time in a long, long time, I believed it. We didn't speak until we were back on the street. The cold hit my face like a slap I didn't mind. It grounded me. The night air smelled like exhaust, cinnamon, and something electric. That feeling you get when you just did something irreversible, but somehow necessary. Iris finally broke the silence. You didn't tell me it would be that intense, she said, slipping her hand from my arm and crossing it over her chest, half laughing, half stunned. That wasn't just an ex. That was war. I let out a shaky breath. I didn't even realize I'd been holding tension in my jaw until I heard it crack. Yeah, I muttered. I guess I undersold the drama. But inside, I was still spinning. Not because of what Mallory said. I expected venom. I expected the fake confidence, the passive-aggressive digs, the way she always tried to shrink me into something easier to throw away. What I didn't expect was the way she looked scared. That wasn't part of the plan. I should have felt victorious, walking out of that party. But instead, I just felt hollow. Like I'd won the battle, but the war had already stolen something permanent from me. Like maybe I'd just proven I was capable of playing her game, not walking away from it. Iris stopped at the curb and turned to face me. Tell me something, she said softly. Was that for her? Or for you? I didn't know how to answer. Because it was both. And neither. And maybe it didn't matter anymore. Before I could say anything, my phone buzzed. I pulled it out, expecting a rideshare notification. But it was her. Mallory, we need to talk. Alone. I stared at the screen. She never texted. She'd ghosted me so thoroughly, I thought maybe she'd blocked my number. But now, suddenly, she needed to talk? Iris peeked at the message and sighed. Of course she does. I nodded slowly. Of course. And then, without thinking, I typed just 2 words. When? What was I doing? Why was I still answering? She chose the diner on 3rd, the one we used to go to after movies, the one with the neon sign that always flickered the O in open. I hadn't been there in almost a year, but the moment I walked in, I felt like I'd time-traveled back into a version of my life that didn't exist anymore. Same cracked leather booths. Same smell of burnt coffee and fried onions. Same waitress who gave everyone honey with their tea, whether they asked or not. Mallory was already there, sitting by the window, not wearing makeup for once. That was the first red flag. The second? She didn't have her phone on the table. Mallory always had her phone out, like a second face she couldn't put down. But tonight, her hands were folded, and her stare was empty, like she'd rehearsed this meeting and already hated the outcome. I slid into the booth and waited. I wasn't going to start. She wanted to talk. Let her talk. She cleared her throat. So, I saw her. I tilted my head slightly. I was standing right next to her. No, she said. I mean before the party. My stomach tensed, but I didn't let it show. I kept my voice even. What are you talking about? Mallory looked out the window for a long second, then back at me. 3 days ago, she was at your building. The old one. You weren't home. I saw her get out of a cab, ring the buzzer, then walk away when no one answered. I said nothing. I didn't even blink. I just waited. And then she said something that shattered the table between us, Metaphorically, anyway. She used to work with me. Iris. Her name wasn't Iris back then. She went by Claire. We weren't close, but I remember her. Quiet. Always watching. My mind started to spin. Not because I believed Mallory. I didn't know what her angle was yet, but because that name did sound familiar. And now I was the one shrinking in my seat, feeling like maybe I'd walked into a different kind of trap. She left the company after? Well, after everything happened, Mallory continued, her voice suddenly soft. I didn't know why. Now I do. I finally found my voice. What are you implying? Mallory leaned forward, her tone no longer defensive, but eerily calm. I think this wasn't random. I think you were chosen, Owen. And I don't think she's here just to hold your hand and make you feel powerful. I wanted to scoff. I wanted to laugh it off. But I didn't. Because for the first time since that night at the party, I realized I didn't actually know Iris that well. And maybe, just maybe, Mallory did. I didn't sleep that night. Not even close. I just laid there in the dark, in a bed that wasn't mine, staring at a ceiling fan that spun like my thoughts. Endlessly, pointlessly. Mallory's words kept playing in my head on a loop. She used to work with me. She wasn't Iris back then. I kept telling myself it was a manipulation tactic. Another one of her games. She saw me happy, or pretending to be, and needed to poison it, because that's what she does. That's who she is. But then I remembered something. Something small. Something stupid. The first time Iris came to my place, she noticed a framed photo on the bookshelf. Me and Mallory at some charity art auction years ago. We were smiling, back when that still happened. Iris stared at it for maybe 3 seconds too long, then said, I've always hated those catered wine events. Everyone's fake nice until the shrimp runs out. I laughed back then. Thought it was just a weirdly specific joke. Now I wasn't so sure. Around 3:14 a.m., I caved. I picked up my phone and opened Iris's contact. My thumb hovered over the call button, then drifted to her Instagram profile instead. I scrolled, slowly, looking for anything. But she didn't post much. Most of her feed was minimalistic, aesthetic pictures of random corners of cafes, blurry skies, quotes about rebirth and healing. Nothing direct, nothing personal. Until I reached a post from 2 years ago. A black and white photo of a wine glass on a balcony, captioned, You never forget the taste of a place where everything broke. It was Whitmore Hotel, the same place Mallory used to meet her affair partner. I zoomed in on the glass, on the railing, on the wallpaper in the background. I'd been there once. I recognized the pattern. It was unmistakable, and that's when the chill crept in. Why would Iris, or Claire, or whoever she really was, be posting cryptic photos from the same hotel where my wife had her affair? Was it a coincidence? Or was it something else? I didn't sleep after that. I didn't even blink. I just sat there, heart racing, scrolling, searching, remembering, trying to connect dots I didn't even know existed until Mallory shoved them in my face. At 5:42 a.m., I finally sent the message. Iris, who were you before you met me? It showed as read, but she didn't reply. By noon, I had rewritten the message 5 times. Deleted it. Rewrote it again. Her read receipt hadn't changed. Still no reply. It was starting to feel less like silence and more like a warning. I couldn't decide what unnerved me more, Mallory's sudden interest in protecting me, or Iris's sudden disappearance the moment I asked a real question. I couldn't sit still. I walked 4 miles that day. No destination. Just circling through old neighborhoods and familiar blocks, passing places that used to mean something and now just whispered reminders of how many things had rotted beneath the surface. I stopped by my old apartment building, the one where I'd lived before we got married. The number on the door had faded, the buzzer was still broken, and the memory of sitting on the steps with Mallory during that power outage came back like a cruel flashback I hadn't invited. She wasn't all bad, I kept telling myself. That was the worst part, remembering when she was warm. Before the lies, before the other man, before the way she looked at me like I was the thing holding her back instead of the person holding her up. That's what makes betrayal so messy. It's never just anger. It's grief for something you used to believe in. When I got back to the apartment that evening, her message was finally waiting. Just 5 words. Let's meet. I'll explain. No emojis. No punctuation. Just cold text on a glowing screen that somehow made the walls around me feel tighter. She gave me an address. Not a coffee shop. Not a park. A private gallery downtown. One of those upscale, invitation-only installations that rotated artists every month. I didn't know what to expect, but I went. Of course I went. Because apparently, I still hadn't learned how to stop chasing answers from people who made questions feel like traps. When I got there, she was already inside. Dressed differently. Not seductive. Not performative. Just simple. Soft colors. Hair tied back. The look of someone who didn't want to impress. Just confess. We stood in front of a large abstract painting. Black brush strokes bleeding into red, like a storm collapsing into fire. I didn't say anything. Neither did she. For a full minute, we just stared at the chaos on the canvas like it was some kind of mirror. Then Iris finally spoke. I didn't plan it. Not the way you think. I didn't move. Then what way did you plan it? She exhaled through her nose and closed her eyes for a second, like she was trying to squeeze something painful out of her system. Your wife ruined someone I cared about. Years ago, I saw it happen up close. Watched Mallory destroy her from the inside. And I swore I'd never get involved. But then I saw you. Alone. Cracked. Drowning quietly. I turned to her. My voice came out thinner than I meant it to. So what was this? Pity? No, she said quickly, shaking her head. It wasn't pity. It started that way, maybe. But it became something else. I didn't think I'd care. I didn't think I'd. She stopped. Bit her lip. Looked away. I should have walked out. Right then. Right in the middle of her half-confession and my full confusion. But I didn't. Because in that moment, I couldn't tell whether I was more hurt that Mallory cheated or that Iris never told me the truth. And worst of all, I wasn't sure which betrayal hurt more. I didn't say anything. Not for a long time. I just stood there in that gallery, listening to the hollow echo of our own breathing between brushstrokes on walls neither of us were really looking at anymore. I think I was waiting for her to keep talking, to explain the rest, to offer some kind of clean narrative that would make this feel like a story I could walk out of with answers. But instead, Iris just stood there, quiet, still bracing. It hit me then, harder than I wanted to admit. I wasn't the victim in her story. Maybe I never was. You were following her? I finally asked, my voice catching on the word where like it burned coming out. For how long? Before you met me, before all this, were you already watching her? Watching us? She didn't flinch. Yes, she said. Just like that. No softening. No dressing it up in complicated justifications. After what she did too, she cut herself off, then started again, more careful this time. After what she did to my sister, I kept tabs. Quietly. I knew Mallory would self-destruct eventually. I just didn't expect to meet you in the wreckage. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it sounded like something out of a movie, like I was some tragic supporting character caught in the middle of two women with unfinished history and overlapping wounds. Except I wasn't a character. I was a person, a real one, and no one in this story had asked what I wanted. Not Mallory, not Iris, not even me. I sat down on the gallery bench and let my head fall into my hands. So what? Was I some kind of project? A way to get close to her again? Revenge through proximity? No, she said, a little too fast. Then softer, not for long. The silence that followed was brutal. I don't know how long we sat there. A minute. 5. Maybe the earth tilted a little while we weren't looking. But when I stood back up, I felt it. That familiar shaking in my knees. The one that comes when your brain wants to rage but your heart still wants to understand. I let you into my life, I said quietly, when I was barely holding myself together. You knew I was broken, and you still walked in like you were the cure, knowing full well you were carrying your own poison. She didn't deny it. That somehow made it worse. I thought I was the only one being played. I muttered, more to myself than her. Turns out I was just the only one without a plan. That's when I saw the shift in her face. Something cracked. Not guilt, not panic, but grief. Real grief. And it wasn't for me. It was for what we could have been if none of this had roots in someone else's darkness. I did care about you, she whispered. I still do. But it was too late for that now. Everything had already been tainted. And I had one more thing to do before I could figure out what to do next. I needed to look Mallory in the eye one last time, and end it properly. Mallory wasn't surprised to see me. Not really. I think she'd been waiting for it. Like some part of her knew this conversation was coming, and she'd rehearsed every version of how it might go, except for the one where I didn't scream, didn't cry, didn't beg. We met at our old apartment, neutral ground, she called it. It felt like a mausoleum to everything we used to be. The photos were gone. The couch was different. But the silence? That was still ours. Familiar, awkward, heavy. She tried to control the tone early, as usual. I'm glad you came. There's a lot we haven't said. I didn't let her lead this time. No, I said. You said everything when you shrugged the night I found out. You told me what I was worth to you, without even raising your voice. She looked away, lips tight. I saw the flicker of regret, but I wasn't there for that. I didn't want her guilt. I didn't need her tears. I just wanted done, I told her. No drama. No lingering pieces. I brought the paperwork. Her eyes widened, then dropped to the folder in my hand. She didn't touch it right away. I think she expected more resistance. A final plea. One last breakdown. But I didn't have that in me anymore. The man who would have collapsed in front of her was gone. I didn't kill him. She did. And what rose from the ashes wasn't some movie revenge fantasy. It was just me. Clear. Calm. Done. I never wanted to hurt you, she murmured. You just didn't care enough not to, I answered. And that was the end of it. She signed. I left. No screaming. No closure speech. Just a quiet door closing behind me. Not slammed, just finished. I walked 6 blocks after that. No music. No calls. Just me and the city. Somewhere around 9th Avenue, I felt something strange. Something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. It didn't roar. It didn't sing. It just settled. Quiet and gentle, like finally exhaling after holding your breath for too many months. The pain hadn't disappeared. The betrayal hadn't been erased. But I was no longer living in the orbit of people who needed me broken. A week later, I saw Iris again. Not planned. Not forced. She found me sitting alone in a bookstore cafe, flipping through a book I had no intention of buying. She didn't sit down. She didn't make a speech. She just said, I'm sorry. I looked up, met her eyes, and for the first time since the party, I didn't see strategy. I saw her, and maybe the hurt between us couldn't be undone, but something else had grown there too. Honesty. Finally. I know, I told her. Me too. That was it. That's all we said. And it was enough. We didn't restart anything. We didn't pretend it could be what it almost was. We just nodded and walked away. 2 people who crossed paths during a storm and survived. 3 months later, I moved to a new place. No old memories. No ghosts in the walls. I started sketching again, not for clients, just for myself. I found out I like being alone a lot more than I thought. Turns out, I'm not mysterious or boring. I'm just quiet. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't hate that about myself. Sometimes healing isn't loud. Sometimes it's just waking up one morning, looking in the mirror, and finally recognizing the man staring back. I lost a marriage. I lost my illusion of love. But I found myself. And honestly, that was the better ending.